Hello, everyone, and welcome to our event today on building climate-resilient food systems through global partnerships. I have here a full line of experts from all over the world, and I would like to introduce the panel to you. But first of all, I would like to kick off the event with our keynote speaker, Mr. Paul de Sanker. Paul, over to you for starting off the event. Paul is the Senior Manager for the Adaptation Division in UNFCCC. So, Paul, over to you if you'd like to take the podium.
Thank you very much, Julia. Colleagues, I'm very happy to be here standing in for our director, Yusuf Nassef, that's very busy with the ministers. But it's a pleasure for me to be here to welcome the Climate Resilient Food Systems Alliance and this event in the UNFCCC Pavilion. Today we convene and talk about food, agriculture and water. I know it's lunchtime, so hopefully they're serving us food as part of the food systems. We look forward to that. You all know agriculture is responsible for a lot of emissions. I think it's 15 to 30% of GHG emissions. At the same time, it is also the sector that's hardest hit by disasters and extreme events and so forth. We know that every year 10 million hectares of forest are cleared to make space for agricultural production, and that has a lot of cascading impacts on land degradation, erosion, and so forth. Economic costs of natural disasters worldwide in the upwards of 400 billion plus, and the number is rising every year. So it's clear we need to invest more and more in making food systems more sustainable and more resilient. And this partnership is perhaps one of the solutions to allow us to do that. Those of you that are following adaptation, we adopted the global goal of adaptation last year, and that has 7 thematic areas, and ag and food systems is central to that, linked to everything else, as we know, water and so forth. And as part of that process, through the national adaptation plans, we are unpacking those GGA goals to see how can countries achieve those landing zones in each of those global goals. So we hope that the food system one is going to produce perhaps the first set of results, and then we look forward to this alliance as perhaps to give us that initial start and the initial set of progress. So we convened here a large number of partners today to discuss these approaches, innovations and initiatives to transform food systems in a meaningful way. So we look forward to hearing from all of you. This event, as I said, is organized by the Climate Resilient Food Systems Alliance. It's coordinated by the UNFCCC at the moment, and I hope that all the major food players that are part of it will be around the table, and we're very keen to get started on this discussion. So now I hand you over to Julia to take you through the program. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Paul. And now I'd like to introduce our set of speakers in the order in which they are seated. So Dr. Saul Moritz from representing GAIN. We have Helena Wright from FAIR, Ms. Mfeza Camille Xingwana from the Ministry of Environment, Principal Secretary for Lesotho, and then we have Martial Bernou from FAO and FAST, and Mexolisi Sibanda from the Commonwealth Secretariat, Martin Frick, and our last speaker, Chiara Colombo from IWMI, has just joined us. For all of you to know, in terms of house rules, we need to wear a headset because it's a silent event. So please make sure it's turned on, and if you have any difficulties, staff will assist you accordingly. We're going to have several interventions. We only have 1 hour, actually. If we do have time at the end of the event, I will allow for the floor to take a couple of questions, but maybe I'm a little bit over-optimistic. So I would really like to start with the Principal Secretary, Ministry of Environment, Lesotho. So Mem Xingwana, I was in Lesotho 2 weeks ago, and I've witnessed firsthand the wonderful work that the government is doing in terms of both building climate resilient food systems, but also preserving land and halting biodiversity loss. Maybe for the audience, if you'd like to bring us through just a couple of highlights in terms of some main initiatives and programs that the government is shepherding in this year and the next, that would be great. I would invite all speakers to maintain their interventions concise, just because we have a full house today. So over to you.
Thank you very much, Julia. Like you already mentioned my name, but understandably you would not pronounce it correctly. My name is Maphakamile Xingwana. I'm the Principal Secretary for the Ministry of Environment and Forestry in the Kingdom of Lesotho. All right. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the opportunity, and also appreciate the opportunity that you went to my country and witnessed what my country is already doing. Basically, even before the summit in 2021 on UN food systems, the government also of Lesotho was already taking strides into combating degradation, into taking into account the protection and conservation of environment and natural resources, which of course would be the basis for food systems. Without environment, there are no food systems. Without environment, there's no life. Therefore, it is mandatory to my ministry to protect, to conserve, and of course to assist and support in regeneration of degraded and loss of biodiversity, the fauna and flora and everything. Thank you so much. I have post the 2021 summit, which of course sought to catalyze the bold actions to transform food systems and address the interconnected challenges of food security. The climate change, the public health, it emphasized the importance of creating inclusive, sustainable and resilient food systems that can deliver nutritious food for all, while also supporting the broader global development agenda as articulated in the National Strategic Development Plan. What we achieved post the 2021 summit was we followed up on the follow-up summit of 2023. While we did that, we achieved, as a result of a follow-up, or strengthened what we were already doing. That government strengthened collaboration between key international organizations such as WFP, that is giving us optimum support in all the outreaches that we are trying to do to combat or at least accelerate the effects of climate change. The Commonwealth also played a very pivotal role of resource mobilization, and of course UNFCCC. This collaboration provided us with critical support and technical assistance to advance food systems and climate adaptation efforts in Lesotho. While we were already rolling the system. We also had a diagnostic study on climate resilient food systems in 2023. It was commissioned under the lead of Climate Resilient Food System Alliance to lead the diagnostic this study, which of course was led by UNDRR and FAO headquarters. The study had provided us with key insights into the vulnerabilities of Lesotho's food systems and informed the development of strategies to build resilience against the climate change. We also held a regional workshop on food systems in 2024, which of course has been a successful regional workshop hosted in Lesotho. This workshop was hosted in October. The government of Lesotho hosted this regional workshop on food systems with participation from key stakeholders such as the African Development Fund, AF, Global Environment Facility, the Green Climate Fund, and the World Bank, as well as climate and food systems focal points from Zambia and Eswatini. The key outcomes that we got out of this journey is that we have been able to develop the national food system pathways and visions. This workshop concluded with the establishment of Lesotho National Food System Pathways and a clear vision for the future of our food systems. Also, we realized the theory of change, which was to guide future interventions and ensure sustainable transformation of food systems in alignment with our long-term goals. We also were able to develop a roadmap for implementation. This roadmap is meant to move the food system agenda forward, providing a structured approach to address challenges, set priorities, and ensure effective implementation. While we did that, this was historic to our country because it coincided with our 200 years celebration. And this workshop was held at Tababosiu. Tababosiu is our fortress. It's our historical monument. Therefore, this workshop yielded us to declare this food system declaration. So we have Tababosiu National Food System Declaration. So this declaration, immediately after that, because it was national, however, it had attracted international participants and stakeholders. Immediately, I said we developed a roadmap. This roadmap is intended to be rolled out into the 10 districts of the country. And the work plan is already developed to roll it out. However, there will always be challenges. As we developed the work plan, we saw limited financial resource, that funding would be insufficient for us to roll out to the 10 districts, which of course calls for the financial support that may be afforded to us while we are already taking strides into implementing and seeing that the food systems of Lesotho are improved or sustainable for that matter. We would also need limited financial support to support infrastructure, capacity building, and technological support. It is what we saw as challenges. We also saw that even if we can roll it out, even if we can put our ruler straight, that says the infrastructure I'm talking about would call for us to have established markets for which our communities would have direct access to them. Even if we can have intermediate, maybe the warehouses in districts or in regional or whichever way we would maybe want to support the whole country with the market, but we want to have access to market and develop strong value chains for the farmers so that we strongly attain the food system chain, and the program should be at least at ease. This includes poor roads, storage facilities that we don't have, I said, and distribution channels that affect their ability to sell produce at fair prices and reduce post-harvest losses. Therefore, we are saying, as Lesotho, we are already rolling out the program. Also, mandatory to the ministry. My ministry, I said, it is mandated to protect and to conserve. Therefore, I have a special department looking at soil and water conservation, specialized. Therefore, that is why I'm saying if we can be anchored by financial support or resource mobilization, either technologically, capacity building and finance, I think we are at a point where we can sustainably say we can be supported limitedly while we conditionally we unconditionally condition ourselves to sustainably build the food systems of Lesotho. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ma'am Principal Secretary, and congratulations on the efforts put in place by the government of the Kingdom of Lesotho. I now turn to Martial Bernou from FAO and the lead for the FAST initiative as well. Martial, today has been a very busy day for you, I know already, lots of launches, lots of events. Can you tell us some of the main takeaways? What are we looking forward now in 2025? What's going on with Harmonia and Fast, and maybe also the CRFS and Fast partnership?
Thanks, Julia, for this question. And let me first thanks the Kingdom of Lesotho for bringing on the table that wonderful example to see how all this can be assembled in a different way, from the soil to the food systems, the entire food system. And this is exactly what we did this morning. So this morning, today is agriculture, food, agriculture and water day, so all the different components that we need, because as you said, without water we cannot produce. And during that day, we initiated with a high-level launch of the Harmonia initiative, Baku Harmonia initiative for farmers, which has different objectives. And the most meaningful objective that we can see here, it's in the name, it's Harmonia, bringing harmony in the way all those different initiatives are working together, or sometimes not yet together. CRFS, for instance, and I'm representing also the FAST partnership, we started to have that discussion to see how we can join forces and ensure that we converge in the same direction, and basically we build on all our respective network. So back to this morning, the Harmonia launch was really showcasing that today's we have 133 initiatives, coalition, network, declaration, alliance, partnership, working at the nexus of climate change, agriculture, access to finance, with all different angles, objectives, members, and of those 133, 77, more than half were born since 2021. So basically, it shows the most important thing for me. This is a positive aspect, that it shows that really the world is really looking carefully at agriculture now in the UNFCCC. So this is, for me, the most important signal. And perhaps now we need to move how we can exchange or build the mechanism to exchange information a bit among those different initiatives to ensure we are not reinventing the wheel. And this is basically what Harmonia brings in that, trying to implement, supported by the FAST partnership, that is a partnership that is born for another initiative at COP27. FAST stands for Food and Agriculture for Sustainable Transformation. So FAST was supporting Harmonia to do that mapping. And after that COP, we aim that pending a decision of the FAST board member to have Harmonia being embedded in the plan of work of FAST. So basically, we will really walk the talk, having initiative joining together, and we're also collaborating with you. So it's already 2 initiatives that really associate them together, and we're already in discussion with other initiatives to ensure we are really supporting the country in an harmonized way and not competing each other and proposing different solutions. Because farmers, and I will end with that sentence, farmers need unique solution for their family, for themselves, for the community, and then after this will bring solution for the world. So thank you, Julia, for that.
Thank you very much, Martial. congratulations, of course, on the launch of Harmonia, and much looking forward to working together on FAST and CRFS as well. So now I would like to hand the mic to Ms. Helena Wright from FAIR. We know that FAIR is an ensemble of investors that are globally spread out with different capacities and expertise. So Helena, maybe you can bring into this panel a little bit more the private sector and the investor kind of perspective. What are, the key cutting-edge initiatives or highlights that we can share with the audience today? And once more, I would appreciate if we could be concise in our intervention. Thanks.
Great, thank you. Yeah, so just to introduce FAIR's work for those that are not familiar, we're a 70 trillion investor network focused on sustainable food systems. So a lot of investors coming together, and that means pension funds, etc., institutional investors looking in the long term at some of these material risks around food and agriculture. And that includes climate risk, it includes water risk, social risk, working conditions, and trying to address that within the portfolios by engaging with the largest companies in the food system. And just to point out some of the science on this, which kind of exemplifies the risk that we're seeing, the IPCC said that if business as usual continues, a third of agricultural land could become unsuitable for crops or livestock. So these are really severe risks that we're trying to address here. And I just wanted to touch on one, which is water risk, which was touched on earlier as well. Unfortunately, our research looking at the largest protein producer companies found that over 60% of those companies are not disclosing how they're addressing water risk. So that means they're not looking at water scarcity, or they don't have any plans in place to address water. So I just wanted to touch on that there. And some of our investors have been engaging with policymakers as well, noticing the importance of private and public sector coming together. One example, it's really promising, obviously, to see all these initiatives. It's promising to see the UEA declaration on sustainable agriculture, but it will be important to see how that's followed up. And specifically, I wanted to mention the role of agricultural subsidies being repurposed to support a just transition for farmers and other agricultural stakeholders. Agricultural subsidy reform has been something that's been overlooked previously, and our investors with 7 trillion actually wrote to the G20 finance ministers last year calling on better focus on agricultural subsidy repurposing to align those with climate, with nature, with resilience, and also supporting a just transition for farmers. So I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Helena. And indeed, the role of subsidies and also disclosure of how resources are really used to produce agricultural commodities. I turn now to Mixolisi Sibanda from the Commonwealth Secretariat. Mixolisi, now it's been 1 year since the launch of the Living Land Charter. So how has that brought change about, and what are the new launches that we're looking forward from the Commonwealth Secretariat point of view? Like, I know that you're doing a lot of work to support countries in accessing climate finance, for example, for sustainable food systems. And I've been very lucky to witness some of that work as well in Lesotho, of course. So over to you, if you can expand a little bit on that.
Yeah. Thank you, Julia. And it's incredibly an honor to be here. And thank you, Permanent Secretary, for your kind words about the Commonwealth and the work that we're doing together with you. I just want to preface my remarks by saying that the Commonwealth is, an organization that brings 56 member countries together. And we have member countries from essentially all continents of the world, whether it's the Caribbean, the Africa, Pacific, the Americas, and Europe as well. So we have quite a petri dish of nations, and they represent countries that are at different levels in terms of addressing the issues to do with food systems. What's been quite important for us, and Julia, you mentioned that in your question to me, has been a recognition from our member countries and leaders of the importance and the imperative of the moment. We're in a crisis, whether you look at biodiversity, whether you look at climate change and land degradation. And so in our Commonwealth Heads of Government meeting last held in Kigali in 2022, our leaders adopted the Living Lands Charter. And essentially seeks to accelerate integrated action that addresses the multiple crises that we face as a world. And you'd understand that for us, this is quite pertinent because we've got small island developing countries that are at risk because of climate change. In countries like Kenya, the risk on agricultural systems from pest invasions and things like that is huge. And yet, we also hold probably, some of the largest portions as a family of land across the world. So what we've done since the launch of the Living Lands Charter is to work with our countries to really support them in ensuring that they take action on the ground, so implementation on the ground, but that should be preceded by a good, conducive policy environment. And so we've been quite keen and delighted to support countries like Lesotho and work with the Alliance. And I think it's important for us to recognize the great work that the Alliance is doing. None of us can do everything effectively on our own. And so we've been able to leverage on our partnership with the Alliance, and we're encouraging our countries to do the diagnostic studies that give us enough information to be able to deliver a food systems plan for each country. We're also bringing to bear, through the Living Lands Charter, a number of initiatives that we've already started, such as the Commonwealth Climate Finance Access Hub. And essentially, it is to really try and help countries develop projects and, look at it from a programmatic point of view that address all these imperatives, whether it's food systems or biodiversity or climate. And so we're quite keen to do that. We've managed to support about 16 of our countries, and we've got almost 400 million in terms of financing that has come through that, and we'll continue to accelerate that effort. But I think just one last point to mention is the fact that we are also, accelerating the partnerships that we're using. I've mentioned the CRFS, but we also have other partnerships that we're leveraging to really support our countries. We have partnerships with the conventions, the Rio conventions themselves. We've got partnerships with organizations such as AGRA in Africa, with the Africa Enterprise Challenge Fund, and we're really using all the leverage that we have as an organization to really spur action. And this is the important thing, to spur action going forward to addressing food systems. The world is at a crisis point, and we need food that's nutritious and able to be provided into the future. And that's what we're wanting to do.
Thank you so much, Mexalidi. And I would just like to recognize here the key role that the Commonwealth Secretariat has played within the Alliance and the endured support that we've received in the last year. So thanks again for that. And now, Dr. Saul Morris. So we've heard from the different speakers the investor perspective, the private sector perspective, the country perspective, the UN agricultural mandate perspective as well. But I'm very keen to hear about more in terms of how does nutrition fit into the intersection between climate change and attending to food security, with nutrition being such, a very sensitive and difficult challenge that many countries face nowadays. So over to you to share your views on that.
Thank you very much indeed, and thank you to my colleague from the Commonwealth for queuing up the mention of nutrition just now. So, of course, food plays two roles in our world. One is a cultural and social function, and the other is a biological function to feed us and make us function as people so that we can go about our daily business. And that's what nutrition is all about. And again, that I work for, the Global Alliance for Improved Nutrition, it works across 8 African countries, 12 African countries, and 8 African countries and 4 Asian countries, to try and ensure that everybody has access to healthy diets and is able to improve their nutrition, but healthy diets coming from sustainable sources, and that's where we see this nexus with the climate issues. So we need to tackle that from multiple issues, because food is all around us. It's part of our world in every sense, and so we need to think about demand for healthy diets. We need to think about the supply side, and we need to think about the whole policy and enabling environment. So I'll just give you a couple of examples of our work in each of those so you can get a sense of it. So starting with the enabling environment, first of all, we need to really look at what are the win-win scenarios for investment for both climate and nutrition. And what we've seen constantly is that these two worlds don't really speak to each other. So all of the climate documents fail to mention the fact about the human needs of nutrition. And when you go to look at nutrition documents, you see that they barely mention climate also. So we've been very prominent in the Initiative on Climate Action and Nutrition, which is the sort of the sister initiative to FAST coming out of the Egypt COP. And we really tried through that to document where there are potential win-win options for investment and how we can move forward. And that's been something that's been both global and now taking forward at country level as well. My colleague from Pakistan is here as well and working on that at country level. On the supply side, and I thought it was interesting to hear a colleague from Lesotho talking about the market infrastructure. Of course, this is one of the most critical aspects of resilience. If your infrastructure falls apart the instant that there's a severe weather event, as we've seen frequently across southern Africa, then there won't be food flowing through the food system. The whole thing comes to a halt. Recently, in recent years, we've had, taking the example of Southern Africa again, horrendous cyclones that have swept across the region and knocked out food markets. And so we've been involved in rebuilding them, thinking about how they can become more structurally resilient so that the next time there's a cyclone, they won't fall apart and the whole food system is brought to a halt. We also work very much with small and medium enterprises, which are the backbone of the food systems in the countries that we're interested in, and thinking about how they can be brought on board to invest in climate-sensitive ways. Finally, on the demand side, we need to work with consumers. All of us are going to have to change our diets. Here we are sitting in a country that has wonderful food but is very keen on meat. And we're going to have to move gradually towards more plant-forward diets. So again, there's been thinking about what are the strategies that are going to make people actually want to eat a little bit differently. It's much more difficult than it sounds, and we've been developing approaches in that and also investing heavily in things like vegetable value chains. Finally, we do research work. We've been looking at life cycle analysis of key foods that will have to play a bigger part in our food system in order to move forward to more climate-friendly, more climate-resilient diets, and trying to get some nuance in the discussion around animal-source foods, moving away from the they're bad, no they're good kind of dialogue to something more nuanced about what the role of animal-source foods in the future is going to be and how we can move towards that. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Saul. And now I turn to Martin Frick, Director of the Berlin Office for WFP, the World Food Programme. Martin, WFP is the largest humanitarian agency with a huge footprint globally in over, I guess, 82 countries, maybe more. This has been a year of proliferation of conflicts, but also the accentuation of the climate risk as well, right? So how is WFP really confronting the challenge of climate change in developing countries and the countries that you assist in general? I know that you have innovations like hydroponics, you have climate risk insurance for smallholder farmers, the R4 initiative as well. Can you pick a couple of these just to give the audience a flavor of, the breadth of operations that WFP is carrying out?
Thank you, Julia. And it made me very happy that the Principal Secretary mentioned the Food System Summit, because I lost some hairs over this exercise. But it's good to see how it's basically going forward. And the most important thing here is, of course, the system aspect. I'm mentioning that, and it has been widely discussed, because when the summit was announced in 2019, if you look at the humanitarian side, we had 135 million people who were so acutely food insecure that they would skip meals in order to feed their children and didn't know where their next meal is coming from. Now, we started the Food System Summit with the assumption our food systems are broken. And, you know, that raised quite some eyebrows, and people ask us, what do we mean with it? If we look at the picture today, 5 years later, we are on more than 300 million people who are acutely food secure. The situation has exploded as a consequence, not least of COVID, but also of many, many conflicts, prominently also the war in Ukraine. So it's fair to say that the humanitarian system is really at the limits of what we can deliver. And in that, it is worthwhile that WFP has a double mandate, and we were actually funded as a sort of practical arm in transforming agriculture. More than 60 years ago, 90% of our work was in transforming food systems, as we would say today, only 10% in humanitarian. But this has changed almost to the opposite. Today it's 75-25 because of so many humanitarian crises. But if you look into the field, there are situations like, for example, an extended dry season, an extended lean season, that should not be on the accounts of humanitarian aid. But somehow we have to help people. So from the humanitarian side, we are successfully testing and implementing new innovative approaches. Most prominently, early warning, early action. We can anticipate humanitarian aid that gives people the possibility to actually receive small cash payouts in order to bring themselves and their families in security instead of waiting for the disaster to hit. That works really well. You mentioned ARC replica insurance schemes. This also works really well. But make no mistake about it, this is protecting people when climate impacts are hitting hard. What we need to do, and we is not only the World Food Programme. You mentioned all the different initiatives. Martial mentioned the many new initiatives that are coming in, is really integrating. Because there is no natural separation between a nutrition agenda, a disease risk reduction agenda, a climate agenda, a food agenda, an empowerment of women agenda, a water agenda. All of this is one bit because we are dealing with natural systems. And agriculture is the biggest interface between human beings and the planet on which we live. And so if you take food as a system, we are looking maybe at a bit more than a third of the problem. But we need to look more at the potential of agriculture to be a solution. And I want to conclude with that, because we have exported a Western model of agriculture to the world. And in our understanding, that means highly mechanized, little labor intensive. Now, in many places of the world, what is needed for a nutrition agenda is a diversified food basket. For an ecological system, it's a diversified production system. It's agroforestry, it's silvopastoralism, it's land restoration, making land usable again. And I was very happy to hear the example of Lesotho. This is all fantastic. It has one thing in common. It is very labor intensive. And that is a good thing when you have many young people who are looking into employment. So our job here is to get people into employment, to make sure that the positive work on nature is possible. And that costs money. And we need to make sure that that money actually arrives at the smallholder farmers who are really rolling up their sleeves and putting the sweat equity in. And if we can close that circle, there are many international agenda points that we can fix in tandem.
Thank you very much, Martin. And of course, the takeaway is really agriculture can be a solution. It's not just a problem we need to worry about. But the important thing is really to enable the local communities to leverage their own resources and their skills as well. So now we come to our last speaker for today, Chiara Colombo. Chiara is a policy and engagement advisor for IWMI. Chiara, we've heard water coming up from a lot of our speakers, no? And the last COP saw the launch of the Partnership on Water Resilient Food Systems, which IWMI, UNFCCC, the Alliance are also part of. So why are nexus approaches, climate, food, water nexus approaches so important? And can you give us a couple of examples of the work that IWMI is doing in this regard?
Yeah, so I would be very brief because I think it's the end. And I'm also very happy to be at the last speaker because I heard very insightful contributions. So I'm also very happy that water came out in different contributions from Martial and from Elena, and also this I noted down that over 60% of the companies are not looking to water risk. That's high. I was this morning at the Water Action event, and I asked the TNC on resilient supply chains, and she came back saying that they were working with them, and they were saying that decarbonizing supply chains will also mean that they will be more water resilient at the end. So it's also to see how this interplay is happening in real life. So I think that's very important, and absolutely we did launch this Water Resilient Food Systems Partnership last year. It was also a call to understand how we can bring in expertise from various number of partners, so that we can also support countries, especially in their in making sure that this integration appears also in their climate planning and the plans that there are, so climate like NDCs and NAPs, but then also when they translate those in national plans, that's still there and that is efficiently implemented from national to subnational, and also farmers, smallholder farmers from the national then up to the smallholder farmers. I think that also the food systems transformation is a sort of a challenge, but it's also an opportunity. So we definitely would need to work more together, and these sort of initiatives are helping us. So the water sector is very eager to work with Harmonia or with other initiatives, so that we'll also bring our expertise. For instance, if I can give you like a figure, so during the first UN 2023 Water Conference was the first one after many years. There was an open call for stakeholders to share their commitments, and only 8% of the commitments to like this so-called Water Action Agenda, only 8% of the committees were on food. So I don't think that that's up to the task and the challenge we have. Because we definitely will need to improve that. We need to talk to each other more, be present in each other, agendas and meetings and conferences, and make sure that those linkages are then reflected in the work that we're doing with countries. So IMI also is a research for development. We have a variety of events. We're also working on the humanitarian much more now. So, and we have projects in the MENA region, FCDO-funded projects in the MENA region. So it's truly to understand how we put our efforts together so that we work and we have also better impact on the ground. I think I'll stop there.
Thank you very much, Chiara. Maybe you would like to tell the audience about the opportunity that you have set up tomorrow for parties, especially?
Yes, so tomorrow morning we're having a closed meeting in a meeting room. I don't remember now the number of the meeting room, so please come and see me if you're interested. So it's truly to bring those discussions and bring parties together and truly have a consultation with parties. We don't want to create something that's not useful. We want to hear from them what is useful and also how we can provide and in a way synthesize all the different approaches that we might have and the expertise that we have, so that we construct something that is really useful.
Right.
It's tomorrow at
9:30.
9:30. Yes. Thank you.
So if anyone is interested and is part of a party delegation, please see Chiara after this event and we'll give you some more details. I see our organizers are flagging the 10-minute mark. So before I thank all the speakers, I would like to give the floor the opportunity to raise any questions. If you have a question, please just raise your hand. We'll make sure that you're given a mic and address the speaker that you would like to answer the question. That would be helpful. So I'm just looking around. I see the gentleman with the blue shirt.
Thank you. Charlie Worthington, Food Systems Lead at Consumers International. We represent consumer groups in over 100 countries worldwide. It was really great to hear a lot of focus on hunger, nutrition, sustainable diets, that demand side of food systems. But so often we speak to governments, they're still focused. They say food systems and they mean agriculture. They're not really making that connect. In this space, certainly, biodiversity is a little better. Food Systems Summit a little better again, but still not there. Not sure to hear from any of the panelists that might be relevant to. Any thoughts on how we can address this? What is it that will get us through and, kind of make that food systems approach really come through at government level?
Right, thank you so much. I see already two speakers are jumping on the opportunity to address this question. Maybe Martin first and then Martial.
Yeah, thank you very much. And I can only share this observation. In the Food Systems Summit, some of the issues were easy, but we got constant fire when we started to speak about consumption. This is where the pain point is. And, it is a constant battle to bring the systems perspective. Now we are talking about agro-food systems. I don't like the word of agro-food system. It's food systems, because there's also fish in it, there's consumption in it. It's not only about raising production. And indeed, we have enough food today to even feed more than 10 billion people. We just use it in the wrong way. And to your question, how on earth do we get people to move in that direction? I think self-interest, self-care, health is a very good perspective, and education, of course. And I think, we are engaged in 64 countries worldwide in school feeding, and we are working hard, and we are far from being perfect to make this school feeding more nutrition sensitive and more locally sourced and more as an example for the children to understand what a good nutritious diet looks like.
Thank you, Martin. I think Martial would also like to respond.
Just to add, and I fully agree with you, Martin, with the gentleman, the demand side has to be taken into consideration, and we have a tool for that. We have the Paris Agreement that authorizes to have nationally determined contribution. So basically, this is a way where we should act. At the national level, this is what CRFS is doing. This is what ICANN, the Initiative on Climate Action and Nutrition, they are looking at. We have to look at the national policies, and then those national policies will set the pathway that we will have to follow. So we know that in the convention, when countries need to report on greenhouse gas, they have a template that separates those different aspects, agriculture, land use, and so on. But the national level, the national policy can be the place to reconcile all that. So this is just what I wanted to add.
Thanks, Martial. And I see that Saul and Helena would also like to respond. So I guess it was a really good question. You got all the experts excited.
It was a really good question. It's so great to come back to actual people. And I'm going to slightly differ in my emphasis from the previous speakers. I think we're severely missing investment in real people in food systems. I don't see a focus on vocational training, on changing culture through schools where people meet. I don't see a recognition of all the players in the cultural sphere who actually are the main players who determine how we relate to food. Food is cultural. People don't eat in order to stay alive. They eat because it's a cultural and social function. And so we need to work through institutions like religious institutions, cultural institutions, media, these things as well. The other area that's so important is inclusive governance. At national level, it's very difficult to get a sense that grassroots youth and women's organizations are really, or your own organization that represents consumers, are really able to have a meaningful input. And perhaps that's because the action in food systems actually happens at local level, not really at national level. And so these areas that we need to focus on inclusive governance, particularly at subnational market management groups and local government convenings of all of their stakeholders in a particular city. We need to go right down to the ground level. Thank you.
Thanks, Saul, and over to Helena.
Thanks. Just to add to some of the points made already, I think it's a really important question. I think we need more awareness of the win-win opportunities of areas such as diet shifts and protein diversification. There's win-win opportunities for health, for climate, for nature, for food security, for water security, so many win-win benefits. Not just raising awareness, but also I think now moving to action on the NDC side. We have investors calling for action on the NDCs. We had an 18 trillion investor statement that called for action on this topic and included a reference to diets as well. But we now need to see the ministries working together across different ministries, finance, climate, agriculture, because of the integrated nature of food systems. And just to touch on a point that was made in a panel I was in earlier as well, we need a just transition in agriculture. We've had a big discussion on just transition in energy, but that conversation is only just starting for agriculture. I think that's really important.
Thank you, Helena. So hoping that your question has been duly addressed. Anyone else with a question for our experts before we wrap up? I see a lady at the end of the room.
Hi, good morning. Good afternoon. Okay. Good afternoon. I'm Romy Nazareno from the Philippines. Currently, Philippines has experienced 6 typhoons within a month. So we are really in the climate crisis. I would like to address the question to all of our panelists, especially with the World Food Program. I'm currently working with the government, with the Department of Social Welfare, and we have this LAWA NBNE program focusing on small water impounding and building of communal farms in rural poor and urban poor areas. My question is, we're trying to build up on these small initiatives, locally driven, but most of our produce in the Philippines are going out to the cities, especially in Metro Manila, because the consumption there is big. So my question is, do we have a solution, or perhaps locally led solutions where in fact we can, number one, ensure that the food within the community will still be available, and those that are being not sold, because this is the usual problem in the Philippines. No, the produce going out to the market sometimes get being disposed because the prices are low. The farmers are experiencing bankruptcy because of typhoon. The prices are low because it is a season, so the produce are being sold at the lower prices. So I'm asking WFP if we have a certain intervention where in fact we want to build a food bank, or perhaps more resilient food banking system where we can project if this food can be used for a longer times, or food can be stored on the time, especially in disaster time, wherein this is around August to December, where usually typhoons are experienced by the Philippines. Yeah.
Thank you for that question. I think it was clearly for Martin to start with. So Martin, any examples on locally led solutions during disaster times? We've heard that the Philippines has had in the recent months a couple, six typhoons. Crazy. So it exemplifies the threat of climate change, no, and increasing weather-related events. So what solutions can WFP bring in terms of examples in other countries during disaster times?
I think you hit the nail on the head. We have more of these disasters, and the unpredictable becomes predictable. What we are doing is we are front-loading humanitarian aid. We have, and that's the good side, we have much better modeling. We know in advance when storms are hitting, when a flood is hitting. And in Bangladesh, for example, we have made very good experiences in handing out cash to farmers just a day before the flooding, so they could bring their families away, they could bring their cattle in security. And we do store food in advance to make it available in times of crisis. And that's also part of community management, which is extremely important, that you start bottom up, work with the communities, do their own vulnerability assessment, and help them to do anticipatory action to minimize the damage when the climate-related disaster hits.
Thank you, Martin. Would anyone else from our lineup like to answer? I think Mexolisi.
I think I don't know Philippines quite well, but I can relate with what you're saying. We have a number of small island developing countries that are having disasters every so often, that it's almost near impossible for them to recover in preparation for the next disaster. And one of the things that I don't think any of us did mention here, but it's important that we begin to look at communities and how they can actually contribute to solutions. And for us in the Commonwealth Secretariat, we've begun to realize actually communities have solutions, whether it's indigenous or local community solutions that they've had. And I think it's time, addressing the nutrition aspects, addressing the resilience aspects, to actually begin conversations with local communities about that, and to work with governments on recognizing that actually there could be solutions at the local level that could address some of these constraints and challenges that we're facing. We've made the point about integration, but we've just recently had a project in Fiji where villages are having to relocate because of disasters, and we're working with nature. So you've got to think about nature-based solutions, nature-based seawalls for that. And not just that, but look at the knowledge that the communities have and find ways to integrate that, mix it with the science that we have. And so we're working with the Ministry of Public Works to design solutions at that local level. And I think many of us working in this space need to recognize that. We have recognized that within the Commonwealth and are beginning to promote and highlight and celebrate the indigenous peoples and local communities' knowledge about systems and how they work with nature, they work with their own people, with each other to get us out of the dilemmas we have.
Thank you, Mekt. And with this, I come to a close because I can see our time is up. But I really wanted to thank all our experts for joining us today. Thank you, Saul, Helena, Mem Principal Secretary, Martial, Mexolisi, Martin, and Chiara. Thank you very much. I would like to ask the audience for a round of applause for this fantastic panel. Thanks again.